So anyways, now we come to the favorite of this year's Vuelta Espana. And of course, where best to start than the defending champion, two-time defending champion, let me add, Primož Roglič, of course, fresh off his time trial victory at the Olympics. And yeah, they're coming here with a very strong team. There are a few notable absentees such as Tom Dumoulin and Jonas Vingegaard. Of course, the two of them were an integral part last year of his win. But yeah, Björn, what do you think of this very strong team that we have coming for Jumbo Visma?
Well, this is a very interesting Jumbo Visma team. It's a lot more Dutch focused than Primož Roglič is used to when he goes for these big Grand Tour victories. Let's not forget the Tour de France over the past couple of years. He's had this specially designed team to help him in support. But this time in this squad, well, Roglič, Haysink, Kruijswijk and Kuss, they're the only ones who really are a part of the traditional Roglič squad that we've seen since the 2020 Tour de France and all the build-up there. So this will be a different approach for him in this race, but he still has his buddies alongside him, of which they've all done this year's Tour de France. Elsewhere, we do also have some integral figures to feature in this team, including Koen Bouwman and Sam Oomen, both of which have proved themselves very, very well over the past couple of years. Oomen getting a top 10 at the Giro in 2018 in support of Tom Dumoulin, as well as Koen Bouwman's very good Giro d'Italia from earlier this year. So this is a strong Jumbo Visma squad. However, I've neglected to talk about Roglič. Well, the Olympic champion has been looking to be on much better form at the moment, rolling through with a 1-minute advantage at that Olympic Games, proves that he's got the legs back after what was a difficult Tour de France. This Vuelta Espana, well, it seems to suit Roglič. He likes the hillier stages. He likes the Spanish climbs, especially these steeper ones. So I think Roglič is probably bound for a podium, but he's going to have some competition from a certain Colombian that I'm sure we'll discuss in a minute. But Roglič, if he gets this big victory here, he will join the Hall of Fame with 3 Vuelta victories and join that illustrious club.
So anyways, one team that we've already spoken about on the channel, but Ewan hasn't had his 2 cents on the topic, of course, that is the formidably strong Ineos Grenadiers, who are, of course, coming with their 2 newly crowned Olympic champions, Richard Carapaz and Tom Pidcock, of course, in 2 different events, but also the Giro d'Italia champion, Egan Bernal, with his companion Martinez. And Ewan, what do you think of this team? They definitely are coming with another strong team like we saw in the Tour de France.
Yes, they're coming in with another strong team. I would say this is quite like the Giro d'Italia squad. The fact that we're seeing Daniel Martinez alongside Egan Bernal and Sivakov, those were the 3 big figures we were talking about before the Giro. And a similar narrative seems to be playing out this time in terms of a crash before the race that kind of throws their form up in the air. Egan Bernal and Dani Martinez were both involved in an incident at the Volta Burgos, neither of which featured in the top 10 of the mountain stage up Pico Blanco, which will feature at this year's Vuelta a España. But if we see Bernal on the same form that we saw at the Giro, he'll be hard to beat on these climbs. I only really see Roglič touching him in terms of the mountain performances. Egan Bernal really should be the leader of this squad, but Ineos have come, like always, with 5 different options, almost mirroring the Movistar approach here. We have Sivakov, who's recovered from Giro injury, looked quite aggressive at the Olympics and quite good there. We also have Daniel Martinez, who could easily get top 10 at this Vuelta a España. And also, maybe we could see Tom Pidcock light things up or Adam Yates. There's plenty of options to be played out here. Will all these big heavyweights balance themselves out as a solid squad? Let's not forget Sivakov, Dani Martinez and Bernal did the Giro together. I think Bernal was quite easily the leader there. They sorted that one out amongst themselves. Sivakov was supposed to go with Bernal and Carapaz to the Tour de France last year with Bernal as the leader. So I think they have the experience of working for Bernal whilst having the GC ability to go for themselves. But Bernal surely comes into this as one of the other favorites for the podium, and we could be seeing the Roglič and Bernal show really unfold here on the roads of Spain, and Egan Bernal targeting a Grand Tour Grand Slam just 2 years after he won the Tour de France.
Do you think that this team have it in it to beat Roglič if, let's say, that the crash hasn't been too severe? Do you think this is the kind of team with such strong talent, such as Carapaz, who almost beat Roglič last year if it wasn't for a certain favor from a certain Spanish team, looking at you, movie star, and now with Egan Bernal, who's arguably stronger than Richard Carapaz?
I think this is going to be an interesting battle over this week. We do see some big heavyweights. There's no Pogacar here, but we haven't seen Bernal really look stronger than Roglič since 2020, since the COVID restart. So I'm a little bit skeptical on whether Bernal will be able to topple the Roglič stronghold that he has on the Vuelta a España, but if there's any team that can do it, this one does look quite good. Looking at the squad, while we're waiting the full confirmation of their lineup, we could see some more mountain domestiques fill up the lineup. But I'm incredibly intrigued to see what the new mountain bike cross country Olympic champion Tom Pidcock can do. I think he's going to have a big breakout ride at the Grand Tour here, of course, starting his first GT at La Vuelta. And the opportunities will come thick and fast for him. I'm particularly intrigued to see what he will be able to do on these Vuelta by number stages. You know, the ones with the sharp clickers at the end. I'm thinking of the finish to the Montaña de Cullera and also Valdepeñas de Jaén. These are very steep finishes that used to suit the likes of Daniel Moreno, who is no longer in the pro peloton. But this could be the big ceiling for him to break in order to make it onto the more competitive start list for next year, such as the Tour de France and the Giro. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no pressure, Tom Pidcock. Tadej Pogačar, he of course was younger than you and podiumed his first Vuelta a España. So all eyes are on the Yorkshireman, of course. But anyways, moving on to another team that was one of the favourites for this year's Giro d'Italia, did end up finishing second with not the rider they were expecting with Damiano Caruso, but of course they were hoping with Mikel Landa. And of course he's coming here with Bahrain victorious, looking for another victorious Grand Tour in a way. But yeah, it's a very, very strong lineup and very experienced lineup they've got here. And yeah, even Marc Pardon, who was omitted from the Tour de France squad as well after his very successful Dauphiné.
Well, if there's anyone who can topple either Roglič or Bernal, Bahrain victorious. Step up to the occasion, because this is a mightily strong team. I think they have something that Ineos probably don't, because there is still question marks around Bernal and so forth, and who is actually going to be their leader, because they have so many cards to play. But here we seem to have quite a clear-cut hierarchy for Landa, because we have the better climbers here that will just drop him off with 1 kilometer to go. I'm talking about the likes of Dylan Teuns, Pauls, Gino Merda, and also Pardon, who are very, very strong climbers, could probably get a top 10 on their own, but they're not Grand Tour podium finishers, really. And they're all going to be working in service of Landa. How Landa's going, though, is a little bit unknown, because, of course, he crashed out of the Giro d'Italia when he looked very good there. He said he had probably the form of his life running into that race. And he looks okay at Burgos. It's a race that he's done well at in the past, but we'll have to wait and see how he goes at La Vuelta. I'm waiting to see a little bit more glimpses of his form here. But if Landa can evoke the spirit that he had when he went to Sestala at the Giro, then I'm sure this could be a very, very good campaign for him. And for Bahrain, whose morale is incredibly high following what has been a phenomenal year for them, of course, winning a stage with Gino Merda and Damiano Caruso and going into the Tour de France and having all the success they did there. Their morale is probably the highest out of any of these teams going into this Grand Tour. Let the games begin.
So anyways, you can't say the Vuelta a España without saying movie star. Of course, the Netflix hit series, as I always say about them. But they are, of course, coming up with a very interesting team, to say the least. They have both Enric Mas, who finished 5th last year and did a superb ride, almost won the Angliru stage, of course. Alejandro Valverde, of course, the runner-up in the 2019 edition, and also, as many people forget, the winner of the 2009 edition. And then, of course, Miguel Angel Lopez, who has almost finished on the podium on every single Grand Tour. Not quite living up to it at the Tour de France yet, but he managed to finish 3rd in the 2018 edition. And Ewan, this is the same old movie star, multiple leaders in the team. And yeah, it really hasn't worked out for them in the past number of seasons.
You know what they say? If you fail once, try again. The saying doesn't go try again at 6 Grand Tours, but here we are again, talking about Movistar. And I feel like we could just cut back to our Tour de France preview and insert that here, because it's essentially the same team. We have Jose Joaquin Rojas, Gonzalo Serrano, Marc Soler, Alejandro Valverde, Enric Mas, alongside Miguel Angel Lopez. So this is a very Spanish-heavy team, which has potential for many top 10s in GC. In reality, I think there's only one man who's going to get it, and that man is Enric Mas from Menorca, because he's finished in the top 10 consistently at Grand Tours in the past, La Vuelta in 2018 and 2020, Tour de France both in 2020 and 21. So Enric Mas, to me, is your man on the money. Miguel Angel Lopez was consistent in Grand Tours before he moved to Movistar, and he had a very, very disappointing Tour de France and build up to the Tour de France. Alejandro Valverde hit or miss during the Tour de France, so we'll have to wait and see how he goes here. There are some stages in his home region down in the south, in Andalusia and Murcia, so we'll see how he goes in his neck of the woods. But I'm very skeptical about Movistar, and I'm tired of talking about them all the time and the calamity that is their team, their management, and so forth. But maybe we could hold our hope for them, because this is their home Grand Tour. They usually get something out of it, whether it's a stage win or a podium. It's something at least. So maybe this could be their year for a top 5. We'll find out.
So Ewan, at the beginning of the year, of course, Miguel Angel Lopez changed to Movistar, and a few people were hopeful about it because the success we've seen with Nairo Quintana at the team. You can't take that away from him, winning a Giro d'Italia and multiple podium finishes at the Tour de France, coupled with a Vuelta a España win. So Miguel Angel Lopez hoping that this Spanish setup would favor him, but this year it hasn't really been his year. I mean, a win in the Mont Ventoux and winning a very weak Vuelta Andalusia race isn't really what he was hoping for this year, you would have thought.
Yeah, he's taken no World Tour wins this year. I don't think he's even troubled the top step of a podium at a World Tour race. If you look at this team, well, Lopez doesn't actually have a contract for next year, neither does Valverde. Enric Mas is allegedly moving to UAE Team Emirates. It's going to be last chance saloon for a lot of people here in terms of if they stay at Movistar or if they go, because to be quite honest, I think it's going to be quite demoralizing for a lot of these guys. If they're big hitters at other teams, they come to Movistar and then they don't get the results that they're hoping for, and they can get offered the same paycheck at UAE, Bora Hansgrohe, or one of these other teams with thick wallets. So it's going to be interesting to see what Movistar do, but I don't think it's going to be a happy camp and a very tense team bus, I'm sure, if last year's anything to go by, especially with so many leaders and so many people battling for the attention of the head of the squad. And I'm sure Valverde will try to make it his plan to lead out this team into what could be his last year, but that once again is also in question.